And constantly making sound financial decisions is essential. So I need to keep abreast with upcoming investments, taxes, technology, or entrepreneurship.
We continue celebrating Women's Month with our Women of Substance series on the round table. This afternoon we are privileged to host the founder and CEO of the Afro Media and Events Company and pioneering genius behind Zambia's big events such as the Zambia Women of the Year Awards and Zambia Fashion Week. And this is none other than the incomparable Karen Nakawala. Madam Nakawala, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm great, and I have to tell you that I'm excited that I finally got you because you've been quite busy.
Yes.
Especially that on the 8th of March was Women's Day. And because women are so special and important, we decided one day is not enough to celebrate women. So we might as well roll out the whole month. And we've been having a number of women that have come on the Women of Substance series. And you are one of such women.
Thank you so much.
We want to tell you on the round table that we celebrate you, and we're very excited that you could make it to the round table this afternoon. Now, you know, before anything, I always want to get something from my guests. I would like to find out their journey to becoming, because you're one successful woman in the fashion world industry in this country. It can never be complete without hearing the name Karen Nakawala. Just who is Karen? You know, before the fashion, before anything else, who is Karen Nakawala?
I always have trouble answering that question.
Okay.
I think I'm a mother.
Okay.
I'm a mother of two, a 25-year-old and 14-year-old. I think, wow, who's Karen? I think I like to describe myself as a creative person, although I'm one of those creatives that has never really followed a single path, you know. So for me, I think I let my creativity just drive me, and in most of the stuff that I have done, I think it's my creativity that drives me. So I'll describe myself as a very creative person. And of course, I'm a friend, I'm a daughter. So yeah, before everything else, I'm just the girl next door.
Excellent. And you know, one thing I love about you, it's so easy to be in your presence. You know, you have achieved so much, and yet being sitting next to you, one doesn't feel intimidated, you know. There's some people who are, you know, achievers, overachievers. You are an overachiever because you've been on so many stages, the world stage, you know, locally, and you've achieved quite a lot, but you're so you remain down to earth. How does that come about? How come there's no, you know, that compasness that comes with achieving?
I think from a very early age, my mother, God rest her soul, always told me, you're a public person. I remember, I think, from the time I was in school, you know, and everything that I did sort of attracted attention, you know. And you always tell me, never forget who you are, never forget where you're coming from, because that will pave the way for where you're going. And also, never look down on anyone, because there are some people that could actually do better than you, but they just do not have the capacity at the moment to do what you have done or achieved, and always learn. So for me, I may have achieved what you say I have achieved, but every day for me is a learning curve. And I'm not afraid to ask, I'm not afraid to fail either, because I don't think there's ever been a journey that has been straightforward without somebody failing, you know. So, and then with failure, obviously, it means that you have to go back to where you started. So how are you going to relate with the people that you left behind if you're going to start looking down on them and thinking, right, here I am, I have achieved? So I have learned to treat everybody equally. Doesn't matter who's in my space. I treat everyone equally, and I think that has made my journey easier. Yeah.
Great stuff. And you know, from what you've just said, one thing that stands very important that I picked out is the conversations that you had with your mother, where she advised you. You know, how important is you know, the support system from, for instance, parents in, you know, becoming what a person would later become in the future?
I think, like you say, that really shaped who I am today, and I am my mother's daughter because everything that mom was, I see myself being that, and so I grew up in her wings, and she was teaching me, and I think what was important for me was she's been, until she died, she was my biggest cheerleader. Whatever stage I was at, whether it was the Women Awards, whether it was Zambia Fashion Week, the first person you see sitting in the front row would be my mother.
Wow.
You know, so she supported me all the way, and that made me believe in myself even more. You know, it made me want to be better, to be a better person, to be a better creative than, you know, I would normally have been. So it's very, very important to support our children, and this is what I have learned to do with my girls as well. They're both very artistic, but I will not push them in that direction. I will support them. Whatever they choose to do, I will support them. And I think that's where a lot of us will get it wrong, because we want children to be something else than what they really want to be. But from my parents and from everybody around me, I think I was cheered on, regardless of what I took on. Even when I failed, they still cheered me on. So it's very important to have a very strong support system in whatever it is that you do.
Great stuff. Now, the campaign theme, you know, for this year's International Women's Day is Choose to Challenge. Now, I would like to know, as Karen Nakawala, who has achieved quite a bit, you know, in her career, what would you choose to challenge at personal level and probably at national level at this point in time in the dispensation?
At this point, I think I would like to choose to challenge women, especially individually, to take better care of their health. And I say so from the backdrop of me having suffered cervical cancer and managed to fight it. So I think it's very important, and I'd like to challenge each and every person, including yourself, to make sure you go and get screened if it's the first thing that you do, if you've never done that before, and to just take better care of yourself. And then on a national level, I think it's very important that we learn to hold each other's hands. You know, I spoke about support earlier. It's not just from the immediate family setup. I think support can come from anywhere. And we must choose to build each other, bring each other up. You know, if somebody is down, don't kick them, pick them up. And if you're rising, lift someone as you rise, you know, so that we have a whole community of enlightened and informed women. So I think that's my challenge to the women out there.
Excellent. And just now you spoke about how you battled cancer and survived. I will come to that in a little bit, because that is one thing that has again stood out about you. You know, at some point in your career, you learned that you had cervical cancer, which you battled very well and came out of. And in a little bit, I'm going to come to that. But for now, I would like, you know, because I've been saying you have achieved a lot, and I know, you know, Zambia Women of the Year Awards, the Fashion Week and so forth, and those sound local. So somebody will be saying, okay, so she keeps saying you have achieved a lot. So I don't want to be the one to preempt anything. I know how much you have achieved, where you've been to, you know, places in the world. But could you, on your own, tell us some of the things that you have been able to achieve, especially out there abroad? I know you've been on too many stages.
I think for me, the biggest achievement has been to be able to captain an industry, which at the time that I decided to take it up was literally non-existent. You know, it was there, but it was just one of those things. But when I started Zambia Fashion Week, for instance, we started with less than 10 designers on the stage. And right now, we didn't have it last year, but the year before last, we had about 64 designers that took part. And this is in 10 years. So for me, though the growth has been gradual, I think it's been better that way, because I think even the designers that I have been working with over time have also grown. You know, it's not nice to take giant steps, because it's very easy to fall. But if you take small steps and grow in those small steps, it's very easy to get to where you want to go. Albeit slowly, but you will do a very good job and eventually get to where you want to be. So for me, when I look back the last 10 years from the time that we started to now, I think that's a very big achievement. And for me and my team, because I don't work alone, for me and my team, we've been celebrating all the small achievements. Every year for us has been a step in the right direction. And we celebrate that because our achieving means that the local industry has achieved. You know, we have seen it to where it is now. I'm very proud when I see our designers on the international market. Before it wasn't there, but now most of the major events, like fashion events, like South Africa Fashion Week, Namibia Fashion Week, Swahili Fashion Week, Commonwealth Fashion Week, you will see at least representation from Zambia. So for me, I think that's a very big achievement. And same thing with the Women of the Year Awards. When we started, it was the first award ceremony that just said thank you and well done to the women. And now in the sphere, we have several awards that have sprung up, because I think everybody realizes we need to say thank you. We need to pat the women on the back. So for me, that's also an achievement, because I think us starting also opened up avenues for other people to also do that. Then 2018, I was given the award as Best Entrepreneur of the Year by the Zambia Chamber of Commerce. So for me, I think that was the cherry on the cake.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But what about, you know, the design industry in this country? How, for instance, is the local consumer, the Zambians themselves, are they really into Zambian designs? I know that, you know, Zambians love to buy clothes from, you know, out of the country. How has it been received over the years? How has it evolved? Are people warming up to local designs now?
Oh, they have tremendously, and I think that's the biggest achievement in the industry, because the public have come to accept and own the industry. You know, because if you go to kitchen parties and weddings these days, 3/4 of the people are dressed in local designs. They're dressed in Chitenge. It's a pity we do not have a manufacturing industry when it comes to fabric. You know. But before we had a very successful industry, but obviously with commercialization came the changes, and our industry just went down. But I'm sure it's going to get there, and it had to start with the locals accepting that, because there's no point in reviving an industry if you will have no people to sell it to. So the fact that we've got, sometimes you see our president wearing a Chitenge shirt, for me that's it doesn't get better than that. We can do better. We definitely can do better. But I think we are on the right track.
And the industry it makes money. Like, for instance, if I decide, oh well, I let me go into, you know, design industry, and am I going to be assured of making good money out of it?
Absolutely. I'll tell you why. Before, there were actually a lot of designers that would not come out, because people treated it as a hobby. Even the designers themselves, initially they would treat it as a hobby, something, you know, what you love to do. I love to make clothes. Then they realized that there was a whole market out there that they could actually sell to. You know, for instance, every time I'm on an international stage, you only see me in locally done dresses in a chitenge. Okay, that was deliberate. I had to walk the talk.
Yeah.
If I was going to captain the industry, I had to walk the talk, you know. And so the market is there. I've got a few designers that have actually left formal employment just to take up designing full time, and they're doing very well. You know, I know one designer who studied to be a lawyer, but right now she's practicing designing more than she's practicing law. So that should tell you that there is a market out there, and the industry has the capability to contribute to the GDP of the country. But we need to invest in the minds of the creatives in order for us to actually get to a point where we can say, okay, fine, they contributed so much this year to the basket of the country. So it has to be deliberate anyway. But I think we are getting there.
Excellent. Is there any organizations that you have as the creatives, as in designer industry, like other sectors have got organizations that they subscribe to that are able maybe to regulate even their pricing, or just to protect them and so forth and so on? Do you have that kind of thing?
Until a couple of years ago, we didn't have any, but now I'm actually very proud to say that we are under the National Arts Council of Zambia. So already that gives us a lot of substance and a lot of relevance in the country.
Excellent. Now we come to this part which I'm personally extremely very passionate about, because you raised, I don't know if you realized what you did, but you literally raised a movement, in women that has really become extremely phenomenal, because I watched it from when you started with, just announcing that you're starting a group called Till Sisters on Facebook, and I liked that page, and every day I saw it grow in ways that I have not seen before, because there's a way that social media grows with pages or funds, and there's some people who will literally boost pages or posts to get more people, but then yours grew organically, and it was amazing to see how many, within a short space of time, women, liked the page and started, interacting with each other, with yourself and others on that page. But before we get to your page, can you just tell us about the time, the point when you discovered that you have cervical cancer, and what did that do to you?
So it's it's something that I think up until now I failed to describe exactly how I felt. But I think any cancer diagnosis, regardless of what type of cancer, throws you off balance, and the first thing you think about is, okay, so when am I dying? You start thinking about, I should have done that. There's so much that you suddenly realize you haven't done. There's so much that you realize you'd love to achieve, because you literally see your life whiz by, the minute you're told you have cancer. And so for me, when it happened, it happened at a time when, like I said, I'd just been awarded as Entrepreneur of the Year. And so I think I was flying high, and then suddenly I had to be knocked right down to my knees when I was given the diagnosis. So from being afraid to being nervous to being anxious, which is very normal, I think, when you are diagnosed with what is supposed to be a deadly disease. So it's I was in a very cold space for quite a bit before I started to realize, what, I can actually get out of this. And I think once my mind started changing to more positive, I think that was the beginning of my healing, even before the treatment itself started. And the doctors would tell you 90% of healing is actually your mind. In anything that you go through, the moment you say you're defeated, that's it. No matter what they give you, no matter what they do to you, that's it. you're gone.
Yeah,
You know, but I told myself I had so much to live for. I think I was too very young, so I was going to fight, and that's what I did.
But you know, this is very interesting for me because, you know, it really has to take a certain mindset for you. And before even the doctors could say anything, you decided that you were going to leave, you know. Anyway, you've said because you had so much to live for, but just take me back a little bit to that point. You know, it's not easy when you get such a diagnosis. It's literally, as you've said, a death sentence. But how do you just slap yourself out of this thought process of, okay, now I'm dying, and then, you know, you just say, hey, you know, I can do this. How does that happen?
Well, I can tell you it didn't happen overnight.
Okay.
It didn't happen overnight. The first time I got the initial diagnosis, which hadn't even been confirmed, but I could see from the doctor what it was, you know. The first week I was like, oh, okay, this is one of those things, you know. And I went about my work, my daily life. And then when I had to go for the results, when I got the results that day, I always find a positive to anything bad that happens. I think I've been like that growing up. I was taught to always believe that there's always a positive, and if you look for it, you'll find it. And so I normally get out of situations, you know, like that. But with this one, I think it took a bit of unbecoming to become. You understand? I allowed myself to go through the process. I allowed myself to cry. I allowed myself to vent. I allowed myself to be angry until I got to a point where I think I now became this person that finally decided, you know what, this cancer is in me. I'm not going to let it dictate how I live or how long I live or what I do. We have to come to a compromise, you know. So from that time on, I started fighting, and I think I had a very good medical team that supported me. And of course, I spoke about support earlier from the family. I think I had the best support system, you know, from the family. And because I'll tell you what, when one is diagnosed with cancer, everybody around you is diagnosed with cancer. They actually suffer more. The people around you suffer more than you do because they're so helpless, you know. They think, I mean, I looked at my 2 children, and even by the time I was telling them, I had actually started treatment already because I needed to first understand what I was going through myself before I could even tell the whole world. So they were among the first ones that I told. And when I told them, because I had already put myself in this positive mindset already, in this space, it was very easy for them to just, you know, carry on. Like, I could see there was up to now, there's a bit of, they become very clingy, you know. Suddenly even the older one acts like the last born in the family because I understand where they're coming from. But if I had not taken that stance before telling them, I think I could have actually damaged them, you know. So everybody around me, I made sure that by the time I was telling them, I was ready. I was ready to fight. And I told myself, I'm going to fight this now, and I'll fight this till the end of time. And so it took a while for me to actually get into that space. But once I got into it, I think everything started to flow. Yeah.
Great. But at what stage did you now, you know, you've talked about how you taught your children and probably the immediate members of the family. At what stage did you now decide, hey, you know, I am going to go public, I'm going to talk about my story, so perhaps I can help the next woman or another person suffering from cancer? At what stage?
So I finished my treatment end of September.
Okay.
And I remember immediately after that we had the Zambia Fashion Week, and I jumped straight into it. And I never stopped working throughout my treatment, and I tried as much as possible to be normal. Okay. You know, I could be very tired, but when I was in a space with people that didn't know, I had to be strong. Okay. Not for me, but for them. Because I know what it's like. I think I've been in that space where somebody that you love is told they've got this disease, and you actually watch them die. And especially with cancer, you know, because you start replaying in your mind all the people that you know, all the stories that you heard, you know what I mean? So I told myself I was only going to do it when I was fully ready. With my family, it was different because living with me, they would have started to notice, you know, she's always sleeping, she's tired. Every morning at 4 a.m. I'm out of the house because I had to go and get radiation at the hospital, you know, and suddenly I'm not as active as I would normally be because everybody knows I'm such a busy bee. So I had to start with my family first because they were with me in that space. So I finished my treatment in September, and I was talking with my doctors all the time, you know, and at that point I'd already been talking to a few people about it. Most of them didn't even believe me. So, no, Karen, we've seen people with cancer, they don't look like you, you know. Yeah, wait, how come you still have your hair? You know, how come you haven't lost weight? Yeah.
Those are good questions because I would also want to know.
And I still can't answer those questions.
Oh.
But I think, like I told you, it's all in the mind. And then also, cancer treatment also does vary.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Cancer treatment does vary. So the type of treatment I was receiving isn't the type of chemotherapy. Radiation is the same, but chemotherapy is not the same. Okay. So they'll probably give you a half dose, depending on what it is. So for me, treatment was actually radiation supported by chemotherapy. You know. So, but even then, I still believe that my hair was going to fall at some point, but it didn't. I didn't lose weight, and I think that's because they caught it in its early stage. Okay, so my body wasn't battered by the disease. Actually, I think my body was battered by the treatment. If you understand. So that is why I keep talking about going for screening early, because once they catch it early, the treatment outcome is better, and even the way your body handles it. So in January is when I actually decided to start the page. And so for me to start the page, I had to tell my story, you know, and so that is how we started that. And then I also realized that when you're going through something, I think representation is very important. And by that, I mean going through my treatment, I had never really come across like a cervical cancer patient who had come out to say, I have survived this thing. I'd come across a lot of breast cancer patients, okay? And so I realized I wanted to be that person that I didn't have when I was going through that. And so that's when I thought, you know what, let me go through this. And then, of course, naturally in the African setup, we don't want to talk anything that is gynecological, okay? There's that's taboo. It's just culture that you don't talk about anything to do with sexuality, you know? And cervical cancer being what it is what it is. You can't rename it. You can't, you can't sugarcoat it. You have to call it as it is. And I prepared myself. I didn't know how the public was going to receive it, but I think maybe there was that gap and people were actually waiting.
I believe so too, because the response that you got showed
was
clearly that
amazing.
It was just people who were afraid to talk about this thing. You demystified it with coming out, and then it took off because everybody said, okay, I can also
do this. Yes, and then obviously when you give something a human face and you give it a character, it's very easy for you to say, okay, Karen went through that, even I can go through that, and let me do something about it. And so once you give it that human face, then it's very easy for the next person to relate to it.
Excellent. Now, what apart from just awareness does from being just a Facebook page? I've noted that now is it now a foundation? It's now a foundation. Just take us through the process of it coming from being. First and foremost, how did you take the kind of amazing reaction that it had? Did you anticipate it?
No. And I always tell the story to say when I started that page, I was expecting maybe 100 women at the most, to join the page. But by end of January, which was like 2 to 3 weeks, we had over 100,000 women.
Yes, I noticed.
And not just women that were there for the sake of being there. Everybody was asking questions. And suddenly we had a whole bunch of women going for screening, you know, and they'll be showing off. They would go in groups, you know, they would encourage each other. And suddenly everybody was talking about cervical cancer, which is what we needed. And I remember at the end of the year, at the end of the month, I got an invitation from the First Lady to actually go and speak at a high-level meeting that they had on cervical and breast cancer prevention. And I was in a daze, you know, like, you know, after about a couple of months, I then decided, you know what, I think we've raised enough awareness and this page is going to be here for a lifetime. It's time to actually now go and do the actual work, get women to get screened. Yes, now they are aware that they need to go and get screened. They're aware that they need to do ABC to prevent the disease. But now we had to now go and actually help with the service delivery. So we now started going into the rural areas. We started with Mazabuka. And we got so many women screened. We went into the prisons and got the women screened. And so that is what we're doing now. And then last year, I think it was October, I got a call. It's somebody from the World Health Organization.
Wow.
I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, oh, okay. I remember I was in a meeting with friends, and I was like, guys, guess what? Guess who called? I was like, what? The World Health Organization. Everybody just screamed and then sat down to ask questions later. Okay, so what next? You know, how? What is this about? You know? So yeah, that just went to show me that, you know what, that needed to be done, even if it meant me being the person to do it. And so we are doing. We've continued to do the screening. So far, we've been to four prisons in the country, but because of COVID, obviously, our plans have been hampered. But we still continue to do what we can in the space that we have, and hoping that things are going to get better, so that we can now go right around the country and continue doing screening and raising awareness.
Okay. So apart from screening and raising awareness, maybe you have come across some women that, you know, are in, you know, not so good, what can I say, women that are struggling even financially, and then you find such a woman screens and then she has cancer. What help does your foundation then give to such type of women?
We have helped a few women, you know, get look, the treatment is free at the cancer hospital. Okay. So what we have done is facilitate, if it's they're traveling, you know, to come and get screened. And obviously when they come here, they're away from family, you know, and that's a very, very lonely time. So we just try as much as possible to make their stay and their treatment journey as comfortable as you can. It's not the most comfortable, and it's not the most easiest of journeys, because I've been there. I know the side effects really hit you hard, you know. So sometimes you find that they may not have money because they're from so far away, you know. And then there's some who in Lusaka who are not even able to get to the hospital because you can't get on a bus, you know. You're too weak. You need people to look after you, and most of the time, it's young ladies who are heading households, and they have to stop work. You know, they're doing business. They have to stop work, so they have to provide for their families. Their kids cannot go to school. So we step in and see what we can do. And obviously, we have other stakeholders that come in to just assist. And the page has been, the women have just been wonderful. Every time you post something to say, look, we need so much help, or there's this person in need, everybody just pitches in to help. You know, so we've been some form of a conduit, you know, and we've managed to help quite a few. We've lost some, you know, and some have survived, you know, they've become advocates. So we're trying to do what we can. We're still a very young organization and still new in the advocacy space, but we're doing what we can.
So Till Sisters is specific to cervical cancer, or do you also raise awareness against other forms of cancers?
Initially for me it was about cervical cancer because that's what I knew.
Yeah.
You know, it was about that, but we realized that, you know what, cancer is cancer. Cervical cancer was because, like I said, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to, we stigmatize, you know, there's a lot of stigma attached to cervical cancer, and we had, like you said, we had to demystify that, you know, and then eventually people would come on the page with other cancers, be it to do with children, even prostate, breast cancer. So we've just embraced everything on the page. But the foundation itself, for now, we really are concentrating on cervical cancer, the HPV vaccine for the young girls, and of course prostate cancer, because they are both gynecological cancers, and they're the ones that receive the least, how can I say, they're the ones that information has really been scarce, you know, there's been that gap. So that is why it's more like cervical cancer related than any other cancer. But we are actually, if you go on the page, we talk about just anything, as long as it's cancer.
So, you know, for the person that is watching that has not had an opportunity to get to Till Sisters page on Facebook and just get the vital information about, you know, screening for cervical cancer, how often should women screen, and what signs should they, for instance, look out for to just, you know, suspect, you know, for lack of better term, that I might have cancer and I might need to have it attended to? And maybe even before that, how often should they go to screen before they get to that stage where they even have to notice that?
I think it's always good. I always say it's better to screen when you are well.
Okay.
You know, because I'll tell you what, cervical cancer takes 10 to 20 years for it to actually develop to a point where you actually have symptoms.
Okay.
It's not a cancer that hits you today and then tomorrow you're sick. No, it takes a long time. And that is why when you present to the hospital very late, by the time you start showing symptoms, it simply means that the cancer has progressed.
Okay.
But if you are screening regularly, it's the same thing as servicing your car. A car will not give you problems if you service it regularly. If the garage says bring it after 60 kilometers, take it after 60 kilometers, because if you don't, it will start tearing and wearing down. Same thing with the body. So if you go for screening, they'll actually tell you come after 2 years or come after 3 years. But it's important to just screen regularly. So when it comes to symptoms, some of the symptoms that you may have, like for instance, I had a very nagging backache, dull backache, but nothing, it wasn't painful. It was not the kind of pain where I would actually take something for it, you know what I mean? Just one of those, you know, a little massage here and there, it goes away.
And especially I've noted that you love heels. And you're always, you know, up and about. You probably thought, well, it's just the fact that I'm so busy.
Yeah.
And on heels.
Yeah. So you get that, you think, and that's what I did. I said, no, I think it's just, you know, because I'm always in my high heels. And then your periods, sometimes they become irregular.
Okay.
Sometimes they become very heavy. In my case, they actually sort of became lighter than before. I think from the time I started, my menses, they were quite heavy. They would always be very heavy every month. But in the year, or even the year before my diagnosis, I noticed they started going down. For me, I was happy.
Yeah, because no more
exactly, no more stress. And then also a few years back, just after I had my second daughter, my doctor told me I was premenopausal, because sometimes, like, I would not have my periods for several months. Then they come, you know, then I started having hot flashes, serious hot flashes. And so I took whatever was happening in that area to be because of the menopause, you know. So so you get that. Then others will bleed very heavily, and then others will start losing weight. You also get some postcoital bleeding in others if the tumor has really grown, you know. So those are some of the like immediate symptoms that should actually raise flags. Don't put them off to shoes like myself or because you're very busy. I think the body has a way of communicating to us, but we just tend to ignore it and always find an excuse for what it is that we think is happening. So those are some of the symptoms that.
Great. We are really getting close to concluding, and I'm sad about it because I've really enjoyed this very informative conversation, Karen. But I would also like to find out, how you rate Zambia's performance in the fight against cancer in general, even before we talk about cervical cancer, because cancer has, in the past couple of years, become very prominent in this country. We had diseases like tuberculosis, HIV, yada, yada, yada. But cancer wasn't so pronounced. But in the recent past, we see a lot of cancers, breast cancer, prostate cancer, and all manner of cancers have come about, and it's something that now is part of our, society in Zambia now. We know there is cancer, unlike before. How is Zambia dealing with issues of cancer, handling cancer?
I can tell you that actually Zambia is one of the cancer hospital here is one of the best cancer hospitals that we have in Africa, and then I think the reason why there's so much cancer is because we've started talking about it. Like I said before, when even a family member has got cancer, you won't even tell your friends, your neighbors, because everybody thinks, oh no, they're going to die. And I think we've seen so many deaths from cancer that have come about. But now because we're talking about it, not just cervical cancer, we're talking about cancers, and people are coming out with positive stories. People are coming out even with negative stories. People are coming up with people that they lost years back to cancer, and only now they're talking about it. So I think we've always had it, but I think now there's just a lot of noise around it. So suddenly we're beginning to realize. It's like when you talk about GBV. It seems to be so apparent now, but it's just because we're talking about it. Before, when you're beaten by your husband, keep quiet. The next morning, wake up like nothing happened. But now people are talking about it, and of course, there's social media. And so I think as a country, we're not doing too badly. We have for cervical cancer, we have the third. I think we're third from Malawi and Swaziland, with the prevalence of cervical cancer. But I think now there's a lot more awareness, a lot more women are being screened, a lot more girls are receiving the HPV vaccine. And so you find that I think the prevalence, very soon you're going to see a massive reduction in the prevalence to cancer. And then also it may seem like the system may be failing, but that's because we only have one cancer hospital in the country that has to treat radiation, that has to give chemotherapy. And so I think the burden on the hospital is a bit too much. So I know there are plans to build 2 more hospitals, I think one in Livingston and one on the Copper Belt, either in Kitwe and in Ndola. So that will sort of decentralize and will cater for the other provinces. But now it may seem like nothing is happening because everybody has to come to the cancer hospital. So I think as a country, we are doing well. I mean, before, when I got the diagnosis, I actually started thinking, okay, so which country am I going to, India or South Africa, to go and get treatment, But all my treatment was done at CDH. Wow. I didn't have to go out. We have experienced oncologists, and I think we have everything. But I think it's just the burden because it's the only single center that we have in the country.
Karen, I have to tell you that this has really, really been an amazing interview. I've really enjoyed myself so much, and I was looking forward to having you for the very reason that you have, explained about especially the cancer aspect of your life. So going forward, maybe in conclusion, just tell us what plans Karen has for the next couple of years. Where are we seeing Karen, especially the foundation, the Cervical Cancer Foundation, Till Sisters Foundation, going forward? What are we seeing from there?
Expect to see quite a lot from me because look, I never ever thought in my life that one day I'll be an advocate for something like cancer. I had no idea, but now it's become my life. You know, every day I think I live, I breathe cancer. I've been very busy, you know, giving talks here and also working with international organizations as well because of Till Sisters. So there's that, I don't know whether the word recognition is the right one, but suddenly people outside actually seeing what we're doing. And so I'm engaging a lot with international organizations. I did mention the World Health Organization and others. So we're hoping that going forward, we are going to be the voice that advocates for equitable access across the board, whether it's screening, whether it's treatment, palliative care, you name it. I think I would like to be that voice that speaks for the equity when it comes to cancer, the cancer sphere. And of course, I think we want to help see reduce the prevalence of cancer. And so we're going to go flat out and make sure that we get as many women screened, as many young girls receive the HPV, and also just support the government, support the ministry in its efforts to actually eliminate cervical cancer. Because last year, November, the World Health Organization launched a global strategy to eliminate cervical cancer as a health problem. And we are among the organizations that actually worked with them to do that. And so I think for me, my dream is just to see the elimination of cervical cancer. It may not happen in my lifetime, but definitely Till Sisters is driving towards the elimination.
Great stuff, Karen. I want to thank you. I want to thank you profoundly for taking time off your very busy schedule, you know, to come and sit on the table with us. We celebrate you. We recognize you as a woman of substance, and hence literally chasing you to come and feature on the Women of Substance series on the Round Table Talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. There you have it, our Round Table viewers, on the Women of Substance edition on the Round Table Talk. This afternoon we featured cervical cancer survivor, Madam Karen Nakawala, who is also, you know, a renowned person in the fashion industry and in media circles as well. And till next week when we feature another guest, my name is Nakiwe Simpungwe, and this is the Round Table Talk. It has been an exciting journey on the Round Table Talk. We have featured a host of high-profile individuals such as cabinet ministers, permanent secretaries, directors, and a host of other high-profile guests. As we proceed with the Round Table Talk, we would like to announce that it is now going mainstream. Yes, you heard me right. Going forward, the Round Table Talk will be broadcast on Millennium TV, Channel 95 on the Topstar decoders, on YouTube, and as always on Smart Eagle's Facebook page. Join me every Thursday at 15:30 hours as I bring to you more and more exciting guests for more information, entertainment, and education. I'm Nakiwe Simpungwe, your host.